X-Men, Powers of 10 and House of X discussion video, part 1 of 3, The Mutants. I was talking to a friend at work about comic books, and he asked me how I feel about Jonathan Hickman's House of X and Powers of 10 series. I told him I was enjoying this run due to the fact that Hickman was breathing new life into the X-Men universe after years of subpar storytelling. He told me that he was enjoying the books as well, but couldn't shake the feeling that the X-Men were becoming evil. I asked him and my other friends how they felt about these two books, and certain phrases came up in these conversations. The X-Men feel like villains, the mutants seem like a cult, and they believe themselves to be gods. These are just some of the things that came up in the conversations, and it got me thinking about how we view evil in a sense. The way Hickman writes the X-Men seems to hint that they are becoming more sinister. However, I do not believe that is the case. I believe the X-Men have turned away from the original goal of coexistence with humanity and have turned their focus on ensuring that their people thrive in a world that hates them by any means necessary. The warrior stands ready to defend, ready to fight for those he serves. He is a warrior of virtue, a knight of conscience. He is who we all wish to be. The past, present, and future. So the X-Men have always been an allegory for those who are oppressed for being different. Ever since the 1960s, Charles Xavier, or Professor X, has had one goal: to live in peace and harmony with humanity. However, his counterpart, Eric Lensher, aka Magneto, feels that humanity is evil due to experiencing the Holocaust firsthand and wishes for mutants to be the dominant race. In the real world, we as comic book readers always choose Professor X due to the fact that we believe in loving our fellow men and forgetting the sins of the past. However, for the X-Men, history has a tendency to repeat itself. What do I mean by that? Well, throughout their entire run, the X-Men have never had a happy ending. Each time they get a glimpse of the future, it always consists of death and internment or extinction. In the storyline Days of Future Past, mutants are hunted down and put in internment camps, and frankly, multiple timelines end in this way, as we'll soon discuss, with a certain mutant, hint hint. And in current continuity, there was once an island named Genosha, founded by Magneto, and it was once a safe haven for mutants to go if they wished to not be around humans anymore. However, tragedy struck when Sentinels came down and wiped out about 16.5 million mutants. Then, to make matters worse, the Scarlet Witch, who was once thought to be an actual mutant, used her powers over reality to depower over 1 million mutants. Both these events led to the mutant population being decreased to a mere 198. And even so, the X-Men still decided to be the better people and decided to defend the people that hate them. But that was until we meet Moira McTaggart. The Many Lives of Moira McTaggart. So Moira McTaggart has been a friend to the X-Men and lover of Professor Xavier on more than one occasion. She's always been known as a human friend and geneticist when it comes to the Marvel Universe. But Jonathan Hickman reintroduces her as a mutant with the ability of reincarnation. Every time she dies, she restarts her life in her mother's womb with the knowledge of her previous lives. When she realizes this power, she doesn't realize what she is until she meets Professor X. And as stated before, the X-Men have never had a happy ending, and Moira is living proof of that. In the multiple lives she's lived, mutants are always slaughtered. when she works with Professor X to create a mutant island like Genosha, but decide to live far away from humanity. And again, Sentinels come down and slaughter every mutant they see. In one of her lives, she hunts down the inventor of Sentinels, Boulevard Trask, and kills him along with anyone related to him. However, this does not end well for her, because even without Trask, humanity still develops Sentinels, and they end up killing mutants. And in her next few lives, she becomes so desperate to see the mutants thrive that she joins mutants like Magneto and Apocalypse and initiates a war on the world, And in her current timeline, she's gone right back to Professor X and shown her all of her previous lives and shown him that they've always ended the same way. They lose. The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind it. The mutant's new plan. After seeing Moira's many attempts for a good future for mutants, Professor X takes a different approach in accomplishing his dream. He seemingly no longer believes in peace and harmony with humanity, and instead wants to see mutants thrive. So he joins up with Magneto to create a new living island called Krakoa and have mutants live there. This time they decide to play diplomats. They offer humanity drugs that cure Alzheimer's and extends human life by 5 years, all in exchange for the UN to acknowledge Krakoa as its own nation with its own sovereignty. Since the flower for these drugs only grew on Krakoa, and since only mutants can enter through portals, there's no way for humanity to duplicate those drugs. Already we see Professor X taking a completely different turn from his old methods, and according to some, it's only going to get worse from here. The us versus them mentality. For those who say that the X-Men are now evil, I would like to ask a few questions. Number 1, how far would you go to protect the people under your roof and ensure that they have a future? How much of your humanity would you be willing to lose to ensure that everyone and everything you love stays safe? How long should someone tolerate abuse before lashing out and or taking revenge? And lastly, how far should forgiveness really go? In their entire history, the X-Men have fought to protect those that hate them, and the results are always the same. Professor X puts it best when he watches Cyclops, Jean, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler die on a mission. Look how it always ends, with fire, with death, with funerals for our children. And when you consider how many X-Men have died, how many times the mutants have been slaughtered, how many futures they've seen with nothing but death and destruction, there's just so many years worth of pain in those words that you can't really say that they're evil at this point. As he's building Krakoa with Moira, Professor X turns to the one person he wishes to join him, and that's Magneto. After showing him the lives of Moira and showing him that they always lose, Magneto agrees to join them. However, he has his conditions. I will not acquiesce to sympathy or doubt, Charles. I will check you at every moment of weakness. And if you falter, know that I will not, is what Magneto tells Professor X in exchange before shaking his hand and deciding to build the future together. And in House of X number 6, Professor X does indeed prove that he's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure mutants survive when he announces to the world that he's taking mutants and making his own nation. he tells the humans that the dream he once had of peace and harmony was a lie, and that they have to earn the mutant drugs that Professor X is offering. And also, in the most recent issue of Powers of X, Powers of X number 5, he and Magneto asked Emma Frost to be the legal face of Krakoa's pharmaceutical company and distribute the drug to nations that accept their sovereignty, while Sebastian Shaw, a well-known X-Men villain, handles the countries that do not accept Krakoa. His job will be to exchange the drugs to countries for the mutants that wish to leave. Get the drugs in, get the mutants out, explained by Magneto. Essentially, Professor X and Magneto had become drug kingpins in order to see the survival of the mutant race. And after the UN vote, which was manipulated by Emma Frost through her telepathy, Professor X sends a message to all the mutants around the world: come home. Many mutants step through the portals Krakoa created, and the biggest being Apocalypse. And after telling the mutants that this is what he's always wanted, he accepts Krakoa's rules and says that they're one people now. And Charles Xavier, a man who once valued peace, shakes hand with him and welcomes him home as if he's some lost relative. And when you truly think about it, humanity kinda drove them to this point. Our greatest glory is not never falling, but in rising every time we fall. The scariest thing about this entire Powers of X and House of X scenario is the X-Men's change of heart and change of mind. The X-Men have finally woken up to the situation that they are in. Humanity will never accept or love you, not because you don't deserve it, but because they envy you. They hate your superiority and always will, is a quote from Namor in the Powers of X series. You can only push people so far before they snap, and the X-Men have finally reached their breaking point. They have found the answers to the questions I previously asked, and they are tired of protecting humankind while their people die. They're tired of being heroes to people that would kill them. They no longer wish to look out for their fellow man, but instead wish to see their people thrive by any means. The scariest thing about this entire situation is that the X-Men are just tired of being good. And after all the years of genocide and threats and funerals for children, can you really blame them? And next time, I'll be talking about how their fear is justified, but their response to mutants to that fear is not. i.e., I'll be talking about humanity in part 2. See you then.